Hey guys, welcome back to this Appium tutorial series. In our last video, we have discussed what Appium is. We have seen the architecture of Appium and how Appium works. Also, we discussed the different type of mobile applications that we can have for doing automation. If you have not seen that video, then I would suggest watching that video first so that you can get the idea of how Appium basically works. You can find the video link in the I button, or you can find the link in the description as well. That video will give you a better idea of how Appium helps in achieving the automation of mobile applications. Now let's start with today's session that includes the installation of different tools and environment setup for mobile automation. Today, we'll do the installation and setup on Windows machine. If you want to set up the environment for mobile automation on a Mac machine or any other operating system, then in this video, we won't be covering the setup for those machines or operating systems. We'll have another session where we'll set up the other machines as well for mobile automation. So all the setup which we are going to do in this video is only for Windows machines. Okay, so the first tool which we need to download is Android Studio. And to download it, you can go to the Android Studio web page. To do that, you need to open the browser and type the address developer.android.com/studio. So this is the web page for Android Studio. Here you can see the link to download the Android Studio for Windows operating system. If you want to download it for any other operating system, then you can click on the download options. Here you will find the installer for Android Studio based on the operating system. Click on the required installer and then accept the terms and conditions to download it. So this is going to take a few minutes to download the setup. In case you don't want to download the .exe file, then you can also download the installer in the zip format. And then these are the different installer links for different operating systems. Android Studio provides the tools for building mobile apps for Android devices, but we are not going to use it for app development. The reason why we are installing the Android Studio is that it provides the Android SDKs and it provides different emulators as well, where we can run our mobile automation tests. It provides the facility to create different types of devices based on model, screen size, or version of Android operating system. So we can use those emulators to run our mobile tests. Also, we can use those emulators to identify or inspect the object of our application. So the download is complete. Now let's double click on it to run the installer. This installer will not only install the Android SDK on the system, but with the help of this installer, we can install the emulator setup as well. And using those emulators, we can create multiple virtual Android devices, which we can use to test our application on different sets of devices. Now let's click on the next button to continue with the installer. Here you can see that we are getting two options to install. The first one is Android Studio, which helps developers to build their app for Android devices. This option will be installed by default. You cannot uncheck the Android Studio installation. Then the other option or component which we can install is Android Virtual Devices. So this component is optional. If you have a set of real devices with you and you want to run your test on real devices only, then you can uncheck the option for virtual devices. I'll keep this option as checked because I want to create virtual devices to run my tests. Now click on Next. After that, provide the install location for Android Studio. By default, it will be in the Android folder under Program Files. I'll go with the default location. If you want, you can change the location as well. Then click on Next. And then click on Install button. This setup will take a few minutes to install the Android Studio on the system. So setup is completed. Now click on Next again and then click on the Finish button. If you want to run the Android Studio, then check this checkbox. So the first time you run Android Studio, you will get this screen for Android Studio setup. This helps in setting up the environment for the development. So to move ahead, click on the Next button and then select the type of setup which you want to perform. If you choose the standard option, then the most common setting used by the developer will get installed. In case you want to install any specific components, then you can choose the custom option. Here I'll go with the standard option. In the next screen, you can choose the theme for Android Studio, and then you can click on Next. Here you can see that what all are the components which will get installed with the standard option. And then click on Finish to start the installation. This will take some time to install all the components which are part of the standard option. So all the components have been installed, and then click on Finish to complete the setup. So this is the home screen of Android Studio. From here, you can create a new project and open a project if you are interested in any kind of development. But in our case, we will be more interested in SDK Manager and virtual devices. Let's click on the SDK Manager to manage the SDK installed on the system. Here you can see that Android 12.0 is the default SDK installed on the system. In case you want to run your test on any other version of Android, then you can select the specific version and then click on OK to install the SDK for that Android version. So you can add multiple Android SDKs based on your requirement. Currently, I'll go with the latest SDK only. Also, to run the Appium test, you need to make sure that the version you select must be equal or greater than 4.4. Appium does not support the devices running with the version lower than 4.4. So we are done with the Android Studio setup. Now the next item which we need to download is Appium Server. Go to the browser and type appium.io to go to the Appium web page. Here you will get the link to download the Appium. Once you click on this link, you will be redirected to the Appium GitHub page, from where you can download the Appium setup for different operating systems. So I'm going to download the Appium for Windows. Just click on the link based on the operating system and type of installer file, and it will start downloading the setup. It will take a few minutes to download the setup. For running the automation tests on mobile devices, we need to run the Appium server, which connects with mobile device. In our last video, we have discussed the Appium architecture and how it communicates with client and mobile devices. If you have not seen that video, then I would suggest watching that video to get a better understanding of Appium architecture. You can find the video link in the I button. Also, I have placed the video link in the description. So the download is complete. Now double click on it to run the installer. On the first screen, it asks whether you want to do the installation for anyone who uses this computer or only for you. So based on your requirement, you can select the option and then click on install. Once the installation is complete, then we'll be able to run the Appium server on the machine. And also, we can create the session with the connected devices, either virtual or real device. Through those sessions, we can identify or inspect the object of a mobile application. So the installation is complete. Now Appium is installed on our machine. Click on the Finish button to complete the setup. Check Run Appium checkbox to run the Appium. So this is the Appium server, and these are the different tabs to get the different options for server related settings. Here we have the Start Server button, which will start the Appium server. Now, before starting the Appium server, let's first create a virtual Android device, which we will connect with Appium to run our automation test. To create a virtual device, let's go back to Android Studio, expand more options, and then select AVD Manager. So this is the Android Virtual Device Manager, where we can manage our virtual devices, like we can create a new device, can update the device configurations, and other stuff as well. These virtual devices will help us to test our application without having real devices, as it is really difficult to have multiple real devices with different configurations and platforms. So in that case, we can create a number of virtual devices with different sets of configurations. Now let's create a virtual device. Click on this button. Here you can see the list of device definitions which we can create. Once we select any of the devices, then this will create a replica or mimic the actual device configuration. Select a device and then click on Next. After that, we need to select the system image which we want to run on the device. Based on the requirement, you can choose any of the images. If you are using it for the first time, then you have to download the image first. So click on the download link next to the system image which you want to deploy. After that, click on Accept and then press Next. So this will download the system image which we have selected. Once download completes, click on the Finish button. So this image has been downloaded. If you want to download any other image, then you can repeat the same process. For now, let's go with the image which we have downloaded. In the configuration screen, you can provide any name to virtual device, or you can go with the default name. From here also, you can change the device. Once you click on this, it will load the device list to choose from. Similarly, you can change the image as well. Currently, we have only one image available. That's why we are not getting the OK button for other images. To download other images, we have to go back to the Select Image screen. And then this is the startup orientation. That's how you want to start your device, either in portrait or landscape mode. Once done with the configuration, click on Finish. Now this will create a virtual Android device for us based on the configuration which we have chosen. So here you can see that the device has been created. If you want, you can create multiple devices as well by following the same process. Apart from the mobile device, you can also create a virtual tablet, Android TV, or other devices where you want to test your app. And all those devices will get listed on this screen. Now to launch the virtual device, click on this Run icon. Here you can see that it launches the virtual device. This device will be having the configuration as we have selected during device creation. And we can run our automation test on this device. Here you can see the WebView browser testing app, which we can use to test our web-based application. WebView allows any app to display a web page instead of opening it on a separate browser. WebViews allow cross-platform development, resulting in reduced development cost and flexibility for the developer. We'll discuss in detail about WebViews in some another session, and we'll also see how to run our app on WebViews. Now we have one virtual device up and running. So the next step is to connect the device with Appium. And for that, we need to start the Appium server. Also, before getting started, we need to update some environment variables as well. So let's go to the system properties where we can set our environment variable. Okay, so from this screen, we can add environment variables. Make sure that you add only system variables. So the first variable which I'm gonna add is Android underscore home. And the value will be the installed location of Android SDK. You can go back to the Android Studio to get the SDK location. Copy the SDK location and then paste it over here in variable value. Click on OK. After that, move to the path variable. Here I'm gonna add a few entries related to the Android SDK. First, type variable Android home and then /tools. After that, the next entry will be for the bin folder. And the last one will be for platform tools. Click on OK to save the changes. Now we are done with setting up the environment variables. If we go to the Appium and click on Edit Configuration, then you can see that it automatically picks the environment variable value which we have just created for Android SDK. And it will also pick the JDK path as well from the environment variable. Here I'm assuming that you have Java already installed on your system, and the JDK path is already set on the environment variable. Now to verify the environment variable, let's open the command prompt and then type ADB devices to get the list of connected device. Here you can see that it shows one emulator device is currently attached. Now let's go back to the Appium and start the server. So the server is started. Now click on the search icon to start a session with the attached device. To start the session, we have to provide the desired capabilities of the device to which we want to connect to start the session. So we have to provide the basic information like device name and then the platform name and platform version. After that, we need to provide the values for these variables. For device name, you can provide the name of your virtual device. In the current case, it is Pixel XL API 30. Then the platform name, which is Android, and then platform version. Here you can see the JSON representation of the desired capabilities, which we have just created. If you want, you can save this as well to connect with the same device in future. And then it will display in the Saved Capabilities tab. Now I'll just start the session. And before that, let's open an app as we have not installed any app yet to where we want to run our test. So let's open any system application. I'm gonna open this calendar app so that when I start the session, we can get the session for this application. After that, click on Start Session. Here you can see that when we started the session, Appium is installing some settings on the device to create the session. And if I go to the Appium server, then you can see the runtime logs pushed on this screen. So here you can see that Appium started a session with the virtual device. You can see that the same calendar app which we open on the virtual device, and then through this session, we can inspect the object of the application. You can see the different properties available for the object. And if I click on this icon, then you can see the ID and other properties for this object. Similarly, you can inspect the properties for this month drop-down object as well. So we are done with setting up the environment for mobile test automation. We have installed all the required tools and configured the system to use it for our mobile automation tests. In our next video, we'll show how we can run our first test on a mobile device. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Also, please don't forget to click on the bell icon. Thank you.